All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Professional Brotherhood podcast. Matt, how are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm pretty excited, everyone, for tonight's episode. Have an old friend of mine, Matt Stiene, is joining us. Matt and I kind of came up through the ranks together early on in the fire service. Um, when I was doing my first tour of duty as chief back in the early 2000s, Matt was doing his as well in a neighboring company. And if you've listened to other episodes, if you listen to the episode with Eric Lubneski, that was one of Matt's former colleagues,
Yeah.
former firefighters, and so we kind of set the stage for you in that episode as to how we used to work together. But we're gonna dive into that a little bit more today. And Matt's got a cool story. I'll start by letting you introduce yourself.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Matt Stiene. Like Brian said, from Sullivan County, New York, originally born and raised. And about 14 years ago, my wife and I made a decision to relocate. We moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're here today just outside of Charlotte in a town called Harrisburg. We got 3 kids, and firefighting's not something I'm doing actively anymore, but it'll always be part of me, and a lot of lessons learned, and just tactics and strategies that have come from that and my leadership time that allowed me to be successful. So
Yeah. So Matt and I, like I said, kind of cut our teeth right around the same time. We progressed through the ranks together at pretty much a very similar pace. Um, took a lot of training classes together. Probably
yeah.
probably to this day, still to this day, one of my probably favorite classes as a student was the fire officer series, when it was
Yeah.
me, a couple other guys that were going through it at the time. I think probably if I put John Hoshold on the spot, who's now our county coordinator,
Yeah.
but was then our one of our state fire instructors. Um, if I put him on the spot, I might get him to agree that it was probably one of his top 5 favorite classes too. But we had a good time.
Sure.
Just a bunch of young guys, kind of learning as we go, and learning from one another. And yeah, let's talk about the old days a little, and then
Sure.
we'll work our way up to what's going on now.
Yeah. So I listened to Eric's podcast last week, and so Eric joined Smallwood. I joined Smallwood, Mongaup Valley Volunteer Fire Department in 1994. I was 16, and just kind of surrounded by the volunteer fire service, volunteer EMS your whole life, right? So growing up in Sullivan County, everybody knows somebody who's a member. I had 2 uncles. One was a captain in the Jeffersonville Ambulance Corps, and then another uncle who was actually a member of, and probably through the social aspect of it, I got more exposure to your former organization,
Right.
being around, firemen's camp and places like that. And my dad worked for a past chief of the Mongaup Fire Department as well. So definitely always around it. And my Boy Scout troop actually was chartered by the Smallwood Fire Department. It's kind of what was the hook into it. And like you said, so I joined in 94. Then I graduated from high school, went on to Clarkson University, and one of your co-hosts, you also often have this debate about what's upstate and what's not. So I'm familiar with her debate about upstate. But anyway,
Yeah.
so I went to school and got my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, and actually moved back to Sullivan County and worked for Sutphen, the fire apparatus manufacturer. I had the opportunity to work there one summer while I was in college, and that was one thing. When I came home for the summers, I always tried to stay active and get whatever training I could. And Small is a small department, a lot of opportunity to get involved and do things. So moved back, went to work for Sutphin, and ended up just getting really involved. I was kind of voluntold I was going to be a line officer. I had a bit of a unique circumstance. You were able to cut your teeth in a much larger organization with a stronger bench, if you will. I started my line officer career as a first assistant chief.
Right.
And so with the agreement that I would do that for a year, and depending on how that went, then I would potentially be the chief the following year. So, you moved back in '99, and then April of 2000 became the first assistant chief. April of 2001 became chief, and served in that capacity. And we did some changes with our officer time slots due to LOSAP, but served in that capacity until January 1st of 2004. Then had a little break, and you and I had actually attended, gosh, it was probably in 2004 sometime, maybe it was earlier than that. I don't know when we went to instructor class up in Montour.
That was, it was right around, I think it was like 2000. Yeah, probably 2003. Probably. Yeah. Because
Okay.
I started working in 2004. So it's probably 2003.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. So I got done in January 2004, and then 2004, Sullivan County had fire instructor spot open, and there was also a change with some of the deputy fire coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up taking on a role as the deputy fire coordinator for what we called hazmat, which is really, more of a decon response kind of team. And I did that for a few months, and then in October 2004 became the battalion coordinator for Battalion 4, and served in that capacity until Tammy and I relocated down here in December or January of 2007. So did a ton of stuff in a relatively short period of time, and really, just really enjoyed it and learned a ton from it. So.
Yeah, for sure. When we had Eric on and we were talking to him, and you alluded to, the amount of guys on the bench, right? But your time there when you came in as first assistant and then moved up to chief, you guys had a really great core of guys that just wanted to work, right? And didn't really care that they were from a smaller department, right? That typically didn't have a lot of its own responses,
Right.
But was just about, the job, being better at the job and training. We all did a ton of training at that time. So, they were all about the training and just being better. And because of that, we ran a lot of mutual aid together. We ran a lot of fires together.
Well, and that was, the time firefighter survival was starting fast and all those things. And to your point, I think, and you and Eric kind of talked about this the other day, everything just kind of came together at the right time. There were some older guys who'd been around the department for a while who really wanted to see the department continue to grow and evolve, and kind of gave us the ability to go do things and supported us when we needed it. And I was thinking back about this. I mean, just the people we had together from a firefighting standpoint, the other line officers we had at the same time, even the commissioners, we couldn't have pulled off some of the things we did without, commissioners who were on board, we did, with the radios we bought and the air packs we changed out and sending people to training and all the stuff that we did together. It was just like the right group of people at the right time. And to your point, we, maybe 50 responses a year was a busy year for us,
Sure.
75, we always joked about breaking 100, right?
Right.
And a lot of that, was mutual aid to Monticello or wherever. But it didn't really matter. It was about what could we do to be better? How can we advance the department? How can we advance the fire service. And again, it was just the right group of people at the right time that really we had a strong group. And I mean, I can remember when I was chief, I never really once worried about all the apparatus rolling if we had a dispatch or who was going to be there for whatever it was.
Right.
And we just had all the right people together. So it was a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've talked about this a few times on several other episodes, whether it's recruitment and retention, on a bunch of different topics. And I get a lot of correspondence from firefighters or fire officers from smaller departments that think because they're from a smaller department that, that automatically is a challenge. And
yep.
And it is a challenge. I mean, it is a challenge when you have less action. I would never ever disagree with that. I think to continue to motivate guys and to continue to get them to train and be ready for the job when they're not putting those skills to task as much is difficult, right? That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
But like you said, if you've got the right group of people and typically that group grows. I mean, in my experience, if you take a half a dozen guys and girls that want to, continue to push forward, make the organization better, it might take a little while, but you usually get buy-in. Like that group usually grows.
Yes.
And I think that's what happened with you guys out there. I think the group grew,
sure. Yeah, I mean, I joined, Eric joined, a couple other folks joined. We kind of started hitting our stride, and more people wanted to be part of it. And and as an officer, I can remember one of the things, and you mentioned John Housel earlier, but one of the things he always said about when you run your drill night, if it starts at 7, your trucks leave the building at 7, or you start at 7. Yeah, you don't wait for people to wander in. I mean, you gotta, and it sets and it's probably something I didn't think a lot. Well, I know I didn't think about back then, but like the culture, right? Like what kind of culture are you trying to put together? And is it a culture of people showing up and it's the cliche of you practice how you play how you practice and all those things. But with the trucks leaving on time, people knew that's what was going to happen. And, I was young and probably a little headstrong too, and probably didn't do everything the right way. Because I think there's a real balance to it as well.
Sure.
You got to find, you've also, but I think we were able to, maybe organically find the right thing for everybody to do to feel like they fit in and could help. Yep. That's the worst thing in the world, is that people don't feel like they can help. Like, oh, these guys are going to be, aggressive. They're going to try to do everything they can all the time. They're real demanding. Mm-hmm. And that could turn people off, and people who could be really effective and helpful. So trying to find that right balance and setting the tone for what you want the organization to be, and it's prepared every time and ready to go whenever you need to. So
absolutely. And understanding that not everybody is going to be a hard charging interior firefighter, but we need fire police, we need scene support, we need auxiliary members. We need all of these people to make the organization work. And we should not make anybody feel any less important or value their time any less because they're not maybe doing the same thing that we are. Everybody's important. And that goes back to what you said. And I've always kind of lived by the same thing. And I know I heard John say it years ago. I've heard many others say it. And my guys and girls in my firehouse know that, for me, on time is late. Like if you're walking in the door, if drill's at 7 o'clock and you're walking in the door at 7, you're late because I'm not there. I'm not there at 7. I'm there 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes early. Depends on what it is that we're doing. But that's how I've always, lived my life. And I try to, portray that to others. If you're walking in the door at the scheduled time, you're late.
Yep.
But
well, and it can be real easy to fall into that trap of it's the same folks who are doing the same thing, and then a new person walks in, they're kind of like, well, what's this really all about? And
right,
so it's you got to make sure you've got that all together.
Yeah.
And I can say too, I think one thing that I being in North Carolina and Tammy and I actually volunteered for, I guess 4 or 5 more years once we moved down here. The difference, I think in New York, with the significantly large number of volunteers, right? Mostly volunteer. You get the opportunity to interact with some of the FDNY guys to train and educate.
Sure.
But they do it in a way that they just make you feel like you're one of them. And that's not the same everywhere, right? We live in an area now. It's like the town I live in is all career. The volunteer department we were in was full of career guys from Charlotte who were there for a different reason, right? They weren't necessarily there just to educate and move people along. They were there because they wanted to be the best. So, I think New York has a unique blend of, as well as the outreach and education programs that the Office of Fire Prevention and Control offers are phenomenal. So it's a great place to be, and a lot of good people to pull off what you guys do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're fortunate. I think sometimes we tend to get a little spoiled and not realize how fortunate we are. Something like this platform and being able to engage with people from, all over the country has really kind of reeled me back into how fortunate we are in New York for some of the things that we have. Look, is it perfect? No, but it's not perfect anywhere, but we do. We have we have a good program and we can do a lot of training, really at no cost to the volunteers or the fire department, which is huge.
And high quality training.
Right.
It is tremendously high quality. So yeah, lots of, and again, you only know what you know, right? So definitely as you get about, you learn different ways of people doing things, and opportunities like this to just hear what others are doing are always great. So
sure, absolutely. So what I alluded to some of the trainings that you and I did together earlier on the intro, and and I alluded to that officer series, but I think what makes certain things special are the people that that you're on the journey with, right? So, that series of officer classes that you and I took together, and I know I'll miss some guys, but I remember like Chris Gibson, he was the chief in Hurleyville at the time, and you were the chief in Smallwood. I was the chief in Monticello. I'm sure I'm not going to remember everybody, but it was just a good core of guys that, first of all, weren't only learning from the instructor who was John at the time, who had lots of years of experience and knowledge to pass on to us, but also we were learning from one another. And I think we all kind of walked out of that class with because you and I, after we always kind of bounced a lot of things off of one another. In the latter years. I ended up we took the instructor class together. I ended up going the instructor route. You ended up doing the battalion coordinator thing, but we still continued to, regardless of what our rank and position was, remain friends and bounce things off of one another, whether we agreed with each other or not. And I think that's important. We talk about mentors and mentors and people you can count on and people that you surround yourself with, your circle. There's all kinds of buzzwords out there for it, but yeah, that is really important for people coming up through the fire service. Like who are your people? Who do you count on?
Well, and I think that's right. I mean, there were a bunch of us. I think Jason Crock from Lake Huntington.
Yep.
But you knew each other, and we talk about this at work today. You want to know people before you need to know them, right? So you want to have a good relationship before you're standing with each other at a fire, saying, "Hey, I need your guys to go do X, Y, or Z," or
sure.
And then having that group of people, particularly if you're in a small department where you may not necessarily be surrounded by people who have the same vision you do, but finding people outside who live in the same environment, and maybe not, maybe they're geographically somewhere different, but who have kind of the same thought process that you can say, hey, is this a good idea? Is this not a good idea? to your point, I think there's a lot of people today when there's disagreement over something, like people just kind of part ways and move on. But
Yeah.
you have to be willing to tell people like, hey, this is a bad idea. Like you go do what you want, but from my perspective and everything I know and I've done, I think you're headed in a bad direction. I think it's really important, and again, it's cliche and people have said this all the time, but being a leader at any level can be kind of lonely, right? I mean, you're kind of on your own, you're doing your thing. So having resources that you can rely on, and how much better is that than have other guys who, are in the same role, trying to move the same things forward. I think you're right. And that all started organically at those series of training classes. And I think we all continue to take them because we knew who else was going to be in the class.
Yep. And look, disagreement is healthy. I don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of people that always agree with me, right? Because I want to hear varying points of view. Now, with that being said, that doesn't mean that every time somebody disagrees with me, I'm going to abandon my mission and abandon, how I feel about something. And I've said this on different podcasts before and in conversations with people. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have a difference of opinion. All right, as long as when you walk away from one another, you understand that, hey, it's okay to disagree. You shouldn't walk away as enemies just because I feel this way about something and you feel, that's part of the problem with our country as a whole right now, unfortunately, but
yeah, sure.
It's part of growth. It's part of learning. It's part of leadership.
Well, and you got to find those people. I can remember, probably my number one fire service mentor is still a dear friend of mine. When we started our FAST team, was adamantly opposed to us doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But the first FAST call we ever had, who was driving the apparatus, was that guy who told me it was a bad idea, still supporting us and supporting what we were trying to accomplish. But disagree. I mean, very openly disagreed with our whole project to build a FAST team. Sure. But when push came to shove, he was there to support us. And you got to find those folks, if it's the fire service or outside, that are going to give you their honest opinion, but then support you when you need it. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, train. You get so much out of going to going into different training scenarios, right? If you can get out of your own station and go to your county, however it works in your area, wherever you're listening to this from, if it's going out to your county and surrounding yourself with people that maybe maybe you don't know, but that you could potentially work with one day, or going to your state fire academy and meeting even more people, or going to a conference or a seminar, or or someplace where you're going to be surrounded with people that you may never ever work with in your life, but you hear different things, you hear, the way things operate in different parts of the country, different parts of your state. And, it really does give you an appreciation for the fire service as a whole, I think.
Sure. Oh, I agree. And like you said, I mean, today there's so much, distance learning based applications where you can get to learn and know people. And I would also encourage folks to go do something that they think they don't have any interest in.
Yeah.
Because you'll probably find somebody there that you'll connect with, that you could talk about just everyday things. I remember we were at the State Fire Academy actually for our instructor class, and there were a couple of guys from the city of Buffalo, and talking to them at breakfast and lunch about not knowing what apparatus or how many people are coming when we had a call and things like that just blew them away, right?
Sure.
So it goes both ways too, right? Because they're used to having their first alarm assignment and it's fully staffed and whatever it is, and so there's people out there who want to learn what you have done and what's different about what's different from they know, and you might take something away from that you didn't plan to learn, but it's something you can bring back and help move your organization forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think sometimes people assume that firefighters are firefighters and we know everything about other firefighters, but It's not true. It's not, and that goes for the whole career volunteer thing. There are, believe it or not, there are career firefighters out there in the world that really do not understand the volunteer system at all,
Hmm.
because that's not what
Yep.
they do. It's not what they're used to. And there are places in the world, big cities, where, look, if you grew up in the five boroughs, if you literally grew up in the
Yeah.
five boroughs and joined the FDNY, and that is your experience with firefighting, is growing up in the city and becoming a firefighter in the city and never going outside the city, and then you drove to Sullivan County, New York, where everybody's leaving their job to run to the fire station.
Yeah.
That would that would
Sure.
that would blow your mind. So
Absolutely.
these are all things that, I think sometimes we take for granted when we're having those discussions that we have sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
But so I don't want to. So your wife was a volunteer as well. Tammy was a volunteer as
Yep.
well. So we don't want to leave her out of conversation. I don't want to slight her at all, because look, you guys met.
Yeah.
She was a
Sure.
volunteer firefighter as well. You did the volunteer firefighting together here in Sullivan for a
Yep.
while. And like you said, when you moved down there, let's talk about that for a minute, because, a lot of us come from, nobody else in my house is doing the volunteer fighting thing. As of right now,
Sure.
I'm still the only one. My daughter's an auxiliary member. I don't know. Maybe my son will get the bug. I don't know, but I'm still the only one in the family. So it's different, I think, and it brings a different dynamic when you're dating, engaged, married, and you were both, pretty active members of your
Yep.
organization, but two separate organizations in the same township. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, so Tammy started in the volunteer fire service before me. She was a member of County of Lake Fire Department and started to be a member of the dive team. Ended up enjoying firefighting and did that. And she was actually, when we moved, she was captain and was going to be, she would have been the next second assistant chief had we not moved.
right.
So yeah, very, very active, very involved. So I knew her brothers growing up, and then we met, I think it was, of all things, like a rural water operations class or something that she was in. And, we kind of connected in, and and then dated, married while in New York with two different departments that, enjoyed some, banter about who was better and color
Sure.
fire trucks and other appropriate things.
Yep.
And that was an interesting time. I mean, because it was important to her that she felt like she was supported, and I think we did that, and she was very active and involved, right? So it was a fun experience, because I think what was fun about it was she knew what I was dealing with when we had calls, and vice versa, right?
Yep.
And one of us got up at 3:00 in the morning and go to a call. We got up and went to a call, and that was kind of it. Then we moved down here, and we responded together a lot. The apartment we were in down here went on about 1,500 runs a year. We lived less than a mile from the station, and it would often be Tammy and I on the first due engine, either her driving or me driving, and one of the other ones riding. I mean, I can honestly say that I nearly probably killed my wife one night at a car fire, because I was blind to the fire scene from a pump operator perspective, and it was just the two of us at this car fire initially, and I walked away to do something, and the pump pressure went to like 250 pounds, and she was literally laying on the hose, yelling.
You're literally almost killed her. I'm laughing over here like, oh, we got into an argument. I almost killed her.
No. It's been fun. I mean, we've really enjoyed it. I think we often talk about it now. It's probably one of the things we miss the most about New York. And again too, New York, very community oriented. We were down here, we were fighting fire. I mean,
Right.
you know, when you're going to 1,500 calls a year, that's what you do. North Carolina is a little bit unique in that like every state. So the state fire marshal actually is the commissioner of insurance for the state as well. So,
Okay.
so the state fire marshal's desire in running a fire service is to keep insurance rates low. So there's actually a state statute in North Carolina that requires departments to have on any activated alarm or reported structure fire, a minimum of 4 firefighters from your department
Okay.
respond to that call. So that has led to many of the volunteer departments here either becoming combination or going completely paid or completely career because of that requirement. So again, it was fun for us to do it together down here, and it just a completely different experience. And then when we had when our daughter was born, it was kind of like, yeah, it's probably, you know, the timing was just right. It was different than what we had enjoyed in New York. Timing was probably right for us to give it up. But, you know, something I have to thank for the fire service for sure is her, right? I mean, we've been married 15 years now and 3 great kids, and it was a blast. So
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk about where you are today. All right, outside of the fire service, so you're not actively volunteering anymore. But when you and I first started talking about doing this, one of the things that you wanted to talk about, which I think is extremely valuable, and sometimes people take for granted or just don't realize, right? How the lessons you learned coming up through the ranks in the volunteer fire service, and that training and education and the different positions you had, how it kind of how it prepared you for what you're doing today, or even how it still helps you in day-to-day challenges that you might still have now with what you're doing today.
sure. Yeah. So I work for Novant Health. It's a private, not-for-profit healthcare system. And we operate 15 hospitals and about 600 other locations in Virginia and North Carolina. And I'm the vice president of construction and engineering. So I oversee all things facility management, design and construction, property management for the company. So it's, like I said, 15 hospitals, about 12 million square feet of space, and all the facility functions, all the construction of new facilities. I've had the opportunity to be involved with building from ground up, starting my 4th brand new hospital, you know, several major projects and that sort of thing. And, you know, probably what made me think about how firefighting ties back to what I'm doing today is my previous boss, probably 4 or 5 years ago, said to me, he goes, well, we were working through something pretty complicated. I don't even remember what it was now, but he said, you know, it's that firefighter mentality. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, you just don't ever give up. There's always, no is not an answer. There's always a solution. There's always another way to do it. You know, I kind of got thinking about that, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, you know, you can't, you know, you get dispatched to whatever, and you got to figure out a plan to deal with it. I mean, I can remember we got dispatched to a individual struck by a tree one day. So I was the chief. I started to respond to the scene. My first assistant chief arrived on scene first and requested a ladder truck. And I was like, okay, like not really sure what's going on.
Right.
You know, but the person had been struck by a tree 70 feet up in the air in a tree. You know, so, you know, how do you deal with that, right? How do you evolve? And then I think from a leadership perspective, you know, you as a fire officer, as a leader in the fire department, even if you don't have a title, you have to lead completely by influence, right? So yes, these are people who are volunteering their time, who technically work for you, but you know, really, if you treat them like employees, maybe were treated in the past, that you wouldn't have the best experience, right? So you're leading people in a very dangerous profession that requires precise response and tactics with all sorts of different variety of problems, you know, they're doing it for free. So if you can be successful in doing that, like you can certainly be successful in working for an organization where you're leading people who have a financial incentive to be there and a thousand other things. And you just learn a lot about how to treat people, right? I think you learn how to get the best out of people. You know, how you get the best out of people and how you put people in the right places, much like we were talking about how everybody's got a place, right?
Sure.
You know who your A team is. And that's probably even the wrong thing. Like, you know who the first two guys you would send into a interior structural rescue are, and you know who the first two guys you would ask to do an extrication are, and you know who you're going to ask to, you know, do your grant application for you, right? All
Sure.
equally important things. And you just learn how to get the best out of people. So,
yeah.
You know, for me, it's something I constantly kind of refer back to. And you think about a call or an incident where you did something, and then, you know, just thinking about, you know, how you treat people. And I also tie it back to, you know, if you're working with your organization as a volunteer, you know, firefighter or leader, and you're trying to establish a culture, that's exactly what you're trying to do as a leader in any other profession. And
Absolutely.
you know, you and I kind of talked about it briefly, but I think the fire service likes to recruit and retain, and it just likes to retain you, and it wants to keep you forever. Because it's hard to recruit, right? But we don't recruit people on the basis of, hey, here's some of the things you could learn that you could take with you somewhere else.
Right.
Which I think is something we're missing out on.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. We don't talk about that. I can't ever recall talking about that. You know, what life lessons, what skills have I or anybody else learned throughout my volunteer career that I use it in my day to day, in my 9 to 5, at home, whatever it may be. You know, and one thing we've mentioned a couple of times already in the episode, we always refer back to culture, right? The culture of the organization, the culture of the leadership, the culture of the people. And not to steal his word, but I was on a podcast with John Stern. You remember John Stern, right?
Yeah,
and,
sure.
And John, instead of the word culture, he threw out the word caring out there. You know, I was like, when he said it, I'm like, where's he going with this? You know, but if you think about it, and when I listen to him, and I got to get him on here one of these days as well, because you know, caring about your organization, the people around you, your community.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a word that is typically used, probably because it's not masculine enough, right? For the
Right.
for the fire service, but you know, culture and caring, and you know, and lessons, and you know, and just what you said about not taking no for an answer. You know, that's
Right.
huge. And that's something we try to instill in people in recruit class, right? In firefighter 1 and probie school. You know, I like to say to them when they start saying, I can't do something, you know, you're already defeating yourself. You know, as soon as you say, I can't do something, you're already defeating yourself. You haven't tried. Like, oh, well, I don't like ladders. Well, how do you know you don't like ladders? I don't like heights. Well, have you ever tried? No, I don't like heights. You know, well, you know, try it.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a great point.
Well,
You know?
and that's a great point. So side note, John Stern and I sat in the same homeroom for 4 years of high school. And I can remember him having his Rock Hill Fire Department, Rock Hill Ambulance Corps pagers at the ready. And he's somebody who's done very well for himself and was a huge asset to those organizations when he was a member. Right. And I think that's something you hear a lot about. Well, I get these kids to join in high school or when they're in college, but then they move away. Well, sure. Yeah, but that's maybe that could be 2 to 10 years that you get somebody that's a great asset for that period of time.
Right.
You know, and I think that's huge. And then to your point about learning something new. So there's still a piece of apparatus at Smallwood that's got my name on a dent in the bumper that they will not fix until they get rid of that truck. And, you know, it's just, that's another experience. I think there's a lot of folks who are like, hey, you want to learn how to drive that apparatus. They're like, nope, it's too big. I don't want to do it, whatever. But like, you're not going to figure it out unless you try it. And it's the
Sure.
same with anything else, right? You gotta try it. And to your point about, during the evolutions, right? I think a lot of the evolutions you do in firefighting are designed to create an obstacle for you to figure out, okay, what are you going to do? Right. Like, okay. Or like you think about a mass confidence maze, or, even just a ladder evolution where it's like, okay, now this is blocked, now what do you do? And all those things help you to keep an attitude. Like when something happens outside of the fire service and you're like, all right, well, that didn't work. What can we do now? Try to keep your head moving and head in the right direction.
Right. Well, we're problem solvers, right? I mean, that's what a firefighter is. A firefighter is a problem solver. So
exactly.
whether you're solving problems, when you're getting off a piece of fire apparatus, or you're solving problems at whatever you do for a living, right? You're still hopefully utilizing some of those skills, if not the actual hands-on skills, the mental skills of being a problem solver and not letting something defeat you.
Exactly. And that's something that, you can use in every instance, and, whatever you go to do, either in life or in a career role, your ability to solve problems is just what's going to help drive you forward in your career or in life in general. Right. I mean, there's even little things that you can just say, and, and the caring comment is interesting too, because like you said, the town that I grew up in had three, there were 6 departments, but 3 that only served the town. And
sure,
I could have joined any one of those. But I joined the one that was the district that would come to my parents' house if my parents' house was on fire. And people would say, well, how did you decide to join Smallwood? And I was kind of like, well, if my parents' house is on fire, I'd really like somebody to come.
Sure.
And I think if people think back to why they joined, most people have joined the volunteer fire service to help somebody, or there's people who do it for a lot of different reasons. But I think when you really get down to the root of it, for most people, it's, how can I help my community? Whether that's actively firefighting or, just being a healthy participant in the community. I think those are things that, again, carry over to other organizations or other things you do, in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Most common answer for me, anybody, anyway, at a firefighter 1 recruit class: why'd you join the volunteer fire service? Serve my community. Now, I try not to let them answer in that way, because I just feel like that's the canned, standard answer that everybody feels that they have to give. But when other words start coming out, whether it's caring or whatever it may be, it all does usually relate back to, protecting the community that I live in, serving the community I live in, being a part of the community that I live in, for whatever reason you decided to walk in the door and fill out that application.
Yep.
That's usually what it's about for most people.
Absolutely.
So, I have got to imagine, I mean, we had to postpone this a week or so because of you're pretty busy with everything that's going on right now. I would imagine, being in a health system.
Yeah. And I would say, today is better than March. I think March was a lot of, again, using the fire service example, it was just a lot of, grasping at straws and trying to figure out how to do things. I told people, in March, I felt like there's a scene in Apollo 13 where they dump a box of parts on the table and say, we need to make this out of this. And I felt like early on in March, that's what we were doing, right? It was like, hey, how can we create these types of rooms, and how can we make this device, and how can we do all that? I think now it's just a matter of, there's obviously much better clinical protocols for it. We've figured out how to utilize the underutilized space to take care of patients. We, unfortunately, in North Carolina, are seeing some of the highest inpatient hospitalization numbers that we've seen all year.
Mhm.
So we lucked out early on. It was a lot of sit and wait in March and April for something that never came.
Right.
And luckily for us, it's come a little bit later where we're better prepared to deal with it. But I think one thing that a lot of people don't know about healthcare is healthcare follows the National Incident Command system, just like the fire service. So, this is an incident for our organization, and there is an incident commander that rotates on a 12-hour basis. And there's your logistics and operations and finance and all your, regular sections, just
Wow.
like a fire service. It's almost like a large wildfire for our team. It's kind of ebbed and flowed over the response. It's kind of gone from an in-person to a virtual, back to in-person, back to
Mhm.
virtual, depending on what's happening. But very similar to what you'd expect in a large incident command system model. So yeah, it's been a unique experience. I think we've weathered it pretty well, and are looking forward to this vaccine getting distributed, and folks are protecting themselves. So
Yeah.
so we don't have to deal with a further pandemic
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
rest of the next year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And look, you bring up two interesting points that I know I personally didn't think of or didn't know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will feel the same way. First of all, we just see what we see from the outside of the healthcare system. Me as an EMT is a little
Hmm.
bit involved in that system, but I don't see the internal operations of things like that. So it's interesting to know that another skill that learned
Yeah.
in the fire service is still being used, in the health network that you're in, and that's the incident command system. And the other thing is, you think about, when you think about healthcare, you think about, the doctors, the nurses, all the obvious stuff, but people aren't going to think about, guys like you that are in the background saying, all right, we've got this, 20 by 20 room. How the hell are we going to turn it into whatever it is that we need today?
Yeah. Yep. And making those rooms flexible, and creating negative pressure rooms. There's a whole, I've got about 200 guys, boots on the ground every day in the hospitals doing all that stuff.
Wow.
Keeping the lights on, keeping the wheels, turning, if you will, and making sure that, like oxygen, right? So it seems pretty straightforward, a hospital to have oxygen, but when you're using the volumes of oxygen hospitals using these days for, COVID patients, there's some precautions you need to take to ensure that you continue to provide that. And
Sure.
those are the kind of things that, yeah, you're right, a lot of people don't think about. And, I think Eric talked about the trades too, and
He did.
how, from a, having a skilled trade is a real help in the fire service. And I also think, the fire service is a help for you doing a skilled trade or anything where you're, trying to, again, problem solve or build or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Those things are all important. So.
Yeah, no, hugely important. And yeah, Eric did bring that up, and that's something that with kids that are at that age, myself, one that's in college and one that's quickly getting there, it's different than it was when well,
Yeah.
our parents said the same thing, right? It's different for every generation, but my point is that there is a lot less of that hands-on. I kind of feel
Yeah.
that when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, that I had more life lessons. I had learned more life lessons. I had put my hands on more stuff at that age than my son had, who's phenomenal with a computer and could freaking school me
Right.
and anything to do with electronics. But you're right. Talking to Eric and talking to other people about trades and being in a job of somebody who
Yeah.
supplies the trade, it's extremely important. And it's something that I think is often overlooked by a lot of people and shouldn't be.
Well, yeah. And, I think it's just everybody's again, this is maybe a little off topic, but just everybody's journey is a little different, right? And I think,
Yeah.
Kara was talking about with Eric about, people waiting to go to college. And, so here, Charlotte Fire, to be a captain, you need to have an associate's degree, and to be a battalion chief, you need to have a bachelor's degree.
Mm-hmm.
So I shouldn't say a lot. Some of the folks I volunteered with, like one guy, he got on at 18, and then got his associates and bachelor's while working full time for Charlotte Fire, and is now a battalion chief. So again, it's just whatever everybody's, wherever your journey takes you.
Yeah,
and, you're right. And, I not that I'm the know everything, but like, we the University of North Carolina, Charlotte has a fire, administration program that a lot of folks joined our volunteer department. We had a lot of kids from UNCC, and I think it was a great experience for them, because some of them just didn't even know basic hand tools, right? So
sure,
when you first get on, like really learning, hey, if somebody asked me for a pair of pliers, it's something I just take for granted that somebody would have known, right?
Yeah,
but it's something that and it's not wrong that teach them, they just don't know, but it's just something you got to teach people. So trying to figure that all out is always a challenge.
Well, and we run into it, especially up here where we are. You're not gonna see, this isn't gonna be as prevalent in more metropolitan city areas, but being up here in the mountains, in the sticks, sometimes we're referred to as hillbillies or rednecks or whatever the hell else you want to call us. But having handing a kid a chainsaw and having a kid look at a chainsaw like, what is this thing that you just put in my hands? Probably 20 years ago rarely happened as much as it does now, because they just had those life skills were introduced to them more, based on where we are. But it's very, very interesting times. And it's really cool to listen to a different spin on things, and hear how how those lessons that you learned are continuing to help you out still today.
Sure. Every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I have in my office I've got my helmet shields and my badges, and a picture from a St. Patrick's Day parade, and kind of constant reminder of like, you can do whatever you need to get done. You can make it all happen. So for sure. If you can do it as a firefighter, you can do anything. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, I'm glad you reached out to me, because it's cool to hear that side of it. It's something that we don't typically think of. Those of us that are still immersed in it every single day. And one more thing I want to point out, you made the point before of, if you get somebody that gives you some time in their younger years, and they give you 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then they move on, you can only hope that when they move on, they continue to serve where they go. Like, look, you guys did for as long as it worked out for you, and that's still admirable, and that's still contributing to the overall goal of being a part of the fire service and giving back. So for some of us, that can last longer. For others, it lasts as long as you can make it last. And I think we should be thankful for anybody that gives any amount of time to the fire service and their communities.
Absolutely, for sure.
So, all right. This was great, Matt. Any parting thoughts before I do all the fun outro stuff?
No, man, I appreciate you having me on. It was kind of fun to talk about it. And like I said, there's not a day that Tammy and I don't think about, the time we spent, in the fire service, and like you mentioned about serving, I still have the opportunity. So I serve on the town of Harrisburg's Fire Advisory Board. We kind of help advise the chief and his assistant or his deputy and the battalion chiefs just on fire department operations. It's
Wow,
kind of
great.
a cool thing, and I've met. It's kind of funny. There's 5 of us. 3 of us are from the north. East, different roles in the Northeast. So it's been kind of neat to meet some different people. So, like you said, always looking for that opportunity, and I think everybody is. And I appreciate you taking the time to have me on and just get a little different perspective this afternoon.
Yeah,
Or this evening.
no, absolutely. And look, I'm glad to hear that you're still plugged in somewhat, and that keeps you plugged in, keeps you active. I do got to ask you that. So how many years have you been gone now?
So it'll be 14 in January.
When did that drawl kick in? Because you didn't have that when you left. That was
I've been working on it. I've been working on it for 14 years, I guess, so it wasn't instant. But yeah, I tell people, ask me where I'm from, and I tell them I'm from New York, and they're like, no, you're not. And I'm like, well, I've been here long enough now, I guess. So, we talk a little slower and enjoy life a little more,
Yeah. No, yeah. Hey, listen, and people talk about adapting to their surroundings, right? So I guess that goes for,
there you go.
Guess that goes for, how you speak as well. You completely adapt to your surroundings. But all right. Everybody, as always, first of all, I want to thank Matt for reaching out to me. It's great to catch up and just hear a different take on the knowledge and the skills and abilities that we learn in the fire service, and how we can continue to make that work for us and continue to be problem solvers in life, wherever life takes us. As always, please, if you have any questions regarding today's episode or any of the past episodes, feel free to reach out via email, professionalvff. That's professionalvff@gmail.com. If you have questions for Matt, because we have had this happen where somebody is at a stage in their life where the guest just speaks to them and they're like, I got a question for that guy. Absolutely. Shoot me an email and I will put you in touch with him. And I'm sure he will, get back to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. As always, on social media at professional.brotherhood, Facebook, Chief Soller, and please keep reaching out, keep suggesting potential guests. We really enjoy the feedback, and it just makes this a ton of fun for all of us. So, my friends, as always, please don't forget, a paycheck does not make you a professional. How you approach the job does. Stay healthy and stay safe.